Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 4 of The Photo Show. My name is Brian Matias. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd. And I want to thank you for joining me. So I'm trying different times. That's kind of for today's update of the show. I think I've got the technology stuff ironed out. I'll be working on getting better lighting, I hope. But for the most part, the multi-camera setup I think is going okay. Yep, everything's looking good there. It's just a matter of making sure that when I transition from an on-camera piece to, say, a video, that the actual audio goes with that. I'm learning my lesson. It's just one of the joys of this kind of laboratory science live kind of broadcast. And so, again, the photo show is the first Facebook Live broadcast that is daily and is focused on photo and video and the technology that surrounds it. So today might be a little bit of a shorter show because I have to go join some friends and shoot pool. I'm part of a billiard league and we're practicing. Monday starts our summer session. And so we're meeting tonight. We're going to practice. And so I wanted to get today's show out there. So the first thing we're going to do is just talk about photo Q&A. So for those of you that may not be familiar, I had a series, had about 5 episodes or so, a video series called Photo Q&A, where members of my Facebook group called Evolve Your Eye would ask questions, or just questions I'd see from other people. Those questions would get asked and I would create a video around it. Now, rather than have a bunch of different videos going on and confusing people, I wanted to integrate it into this show. So yesterday, let me just bring this up here. Yesterday, a fellow I member, his name is Brian Nelson, he messaged me. We were chatting through my page's messenger. And we were just chatting about a few things. And we've talked before about different things, about travels and camera gear and whatnot. But he sent me this message out of the blue. Didn't really, ask for anything, just kind of said this. And so here's the message. It says, I struggle with social media. Many photographers, including myself, are insecure with our work, and likes and shares from social media can be addicting. I try to focus on creating images for myself, but it is hard not to get caught up in the likes and shares. You post an image, and you keep looking on your phone like an addict, waiting for someone to like it, validating your work. What are your thoughts on this? And so that's a doozy of a question. I think that question underscores a major problem that we have in the creative industry, especially as social media and supposed successes of others permeate through. And in some cases, the successes that people have achieved are deserved, and they were strongly fought for. So for those people, yeah, you work hard, and it's not just for you. It's not just a matter of, for those people, it's not so much a matter of the fact that they get high likes or high engagement, meaning comments and reshares and stuff like that. For them, it's taking that and knowing how to turn that into some sort of a business where you can actually make money from it in an authentic way. The problem is that social media and making a living off of social media, for instance, as a photographer, that's very much a pyramid, right? I would say the bulk of photographers out there who post, now I'm not talking about photographers who are just posting because they love it. That's not it. I'm talking about the photographers who are trying to find validation. The most of those types of photographers are kind of make up the bottom, the core of this pyramid. And they post something, and for whatever reason, they haven't even come close to breaking critical mass. And they then kind of tie the success of their work to whether or not they get likes or comments or stuff like that. And because they don't, it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that you're not a good photographer. And then when you couple that with the visibility of, I guess, more successful photographers who seem to be everywhere and, are doing all these different things, and they make a post and like 10 minutes later they have 10,000 likes, that's a really tough kind of pill to swallow. I'm just gonna. So, what do you do in that case? Because the last thing I would, it's a really hard thing, and it's definitely there's a psychological component to it where you're looking for validation, and I'm not gonna lie, like there have been times where in my, I've posted something that I was really excited about sharing, and for one reason or another, it never got traction. But I've also been doing this long enough where you kind of have to, I don't say force yourself, but like anything else, you have to turn it into a mantra where that does not, the engagement rate of a photo does not correlate to your quality or your virtue as a photographer. Because if you do, you're kind of chasing, these dreams on a system, for the most part, that's rigged, right? So Facebook, now Instagram, now Twitter, Google Plus, all use various algorithms to determine what posts to surface to any given person when they visit. So on one hand, you're kind of, you have one or both arms tied behind your back. You're dealing with a system, a social network where you have to play the game. And I know it sounds I'm not trying to make it seem cynical or anything like that, but it very much, social is a game. Or you want to make it a little less cynical, you need strategy, right? You need to post at at regular intervals. A lot of people, they only post once or twice a week, and if you're looking to get mass, critical mass appeal, that will never fly. You need to be posting daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Depending on the network, you'll want to use hashtags. And I'm actually going to refresh my page here because I want to see if Colby's here, because I want to promote something he's working on. Bear with me one second, guys. Facebook is so weird with live stuff. It doesn't, sometimes it'll show me if comments are coming through. Okay, Colby's there, cool. So Colby's actually working on an ebook project that he's talked about specifically on social media strategy. And so Colby's a good example in terms of one type of photographer who has a specific type of strategy to make himself make a living. His photography is not his living. It's how he uses social media to gain clients, or how he uses it to work with marketing agencies. If you want to make a living, and it's very possible that many photographers aren't interested in making a living, and that's totally cool. But if you're interested in making a living, then the photography itself is not really the product. You have to be a good photographer. You have to know, anyone who's vying for this probably can cobble together a really good portfolio. But it's your business practice. How well do you treat this as a business? How well do you market yourself? But with people like Brian, I assume that, bear with me here, I assume with people like Brian, let me bring up the question. It's not so much making a living, right? It's about just getting recognition. And so here are a few things. I was thinking about this a lot. There's a kind of a concept a long time ago I learned, it's called cardinality. And it's typically the relationship between two things. So if you have a one-to-one cardinality, that's more a database rationale where one object kind of correlates directly to one object. So that's a pure relationship. When you talk about social, that cardinality is one, which is you, to the entire population of that network, but with a filter of an algorithm that determines, who sees your post. So you need to kind of really train yourself to understand that whether or not your photo gets liked is, especially if you're sharing publicly to everyone, it's just not going to happen unless you keep doing it. Remember, people like Colby and me and various other photographers who are kind of making a name for themselves or have made a name for themselves. We didn't start this, a year ago. We've been doing this, pushing a decade. We were there when all the networks started and figuring out different ways, like Facebook Live. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew that Facebook was really interested in it, so I doubled down my efforts to produce this show. When Google Plus came out, there were a group of photographers, me, Colby, Nicole Young, my wife, a handful of others who saw the potential in that, and during the years that it was in its prime, it was really good to us. Not because we were good photographers, though, but because we understood how to utilize the kind of within the constraints of that system. So, to bring it back on more kind of a practical level, what I would recommend is instead of focusing on sharing to everyone, join a group. Both Colby and I and a bunch of other people have our own private Facebook groups that are kind of devoted to helping photographers through our own experiences. Shut up, Colby. It's not your 100th year. And so that's a great place because now when I talked about cardinality, now it's you against the population of that group. And the group, when you're in a group, you don't have that kind of algorithm that's filtering out posts. So as long as you do a good job of moderating, whether it's the admin or the admin kind of deputizes users as mods, you have a higher chance of getting engagement. So, and I know that in my group, it's very important. Brian's one of the members who shares photos and is wide open to critique. And that's the kind of growth that I think is healthier to tie your your expectations to as far as a photographer goes. Like, not necessarily growth in terms of getting 1,000 likes and stuff like that, because that's a really tough game. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try. If you want to do that, that's a whole different conversation. Again, books like what Colby's writing might be more applicable. For me, I kind of have an entirely different business model than Colby, and so what works for me is different than works for him. And so to kind of wrap it up, I strongly would recommend finding a community or a group of like-minded photographers, and you want to make sure that a group that has what was it? I think it was Google Plus. When Google Plus first launched communities, if I remember correctly, there was this mad dash. The kind of higher, more well-known photographers, myself included, went to kind of stake our claim for the photography community. And what you ended up having, you started getting these groups with like 30,000, 40,000 people, and it became completely unmanageable. So don't shy away from a photo group that has a couple hundred or 1,000 to 2,000 people, as long as you see that there's interaction. All you do is go into the group and see the posts, and if the posts don't have any interactions, then that might be a good barometer that the group might be kind of not being attended to. So that's a good place. I would recommend focusing on your own website, because your website is your social network, for lack of better words. So I would try that. And the third thing is to try and find something to allow your audience to rally around. And to that I mean like a personal project. Colby and I were chatting earlier today. We were on a hangout and we were talking about personal projects, and that actually leads me to the second part of this episode. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about this fella right here. His name is Matthew Callahan. So yesterday, my friend Lee messaged me, and here's how you can find him. So my friend Lee emailed me this story about this guy who is enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he's also a student at my alma mater, Syracuse University, so go Orange. And he basically kind of took his experiences serving and also looking at photos from battlefields, and used Star Wars figures that he's a huge Star Wars fan, used figures to recreate those photos. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. and he's gaining so much notoriety, rightfully so. So before I talk about more about this, what I'd like to do is show you this video that was produced on this project of his, and I'm going to kick that off right now.
There was one image in particular that I really wanted to recreate. It's arguably one of the most iconic images out of Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan. It's a guy named Sergeant William B, and the image is just him in his, camouflage utilities on, but he's got his blouse off and no flak jacket or anything, and he's behind a compound wall. And the photographer, Goran Tomasevic, he was a Reuters photographer at the time, just right place, right time, snapped like 4 or 5 frames as soon as the sniper grazed the position with the round. And there was just like an explosion of dust and rock and debris. And, just a little look on Sergeant B's face, just, oh, his rifle's all crazy. And I was like, I really wanted to make that image, and I did. They're not exact recreations of the original images, but spiritually, they're more or less the same because, some random person who's never seen, these toy photos before could look at this image and be like, hey, I know what that photo is, and they can reference it. And it was actually interesting when now Galactic Warfighters started to kind of pick up before the opening of the new Star Wars movie. I got an email from Sergeant William B, and he was like, hey man, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I was just wondering if that one photo that you made, is that me? And I was like, I mailed in response, I was like, yeah dude, that's you. Well, from the beginning, I would make these images and I would caption them. I would tell little stories, and I would caption these photos the same way that you would see like a photo of Marines or soldiers in a combat zone captioned from a wire surface or even from the military itself. Like that Associated Press style caption news writing. So with those elements combined, I was kind of essentially creating my own world within the Star Wars universe, and I was trying to ground it in reality. I've always been a massive fan of Star Wars, Aliens, Halo, just science fiction in general has always informed everything about my life since childhood. My grandmother introduced me to Star Wars when I was 4 years old, but Star Wars in particular has always been of really important note for me. It's particularly the militaries in Star Wars. The main characters of the film, like the hero's journey.
I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you.
It kind of paled in comparison to the way I perceived as a child, and even now, in this fictitious scientific world, how these militaries operate on this massive scale. And, since I've joined the military, it's kind of given me a little more perspective as to how it all works, but just the fleets, the stormtroopers, everything, Clone Wars, everything about the Star Wars universe militarily has just been really fascinating to me. But I'll have an idea for the image that I want to see in my head, and from start to finish, it could take 20 minutes or it could take 3 hours. It all depends. I work primarily with 6th scale figures. They're 12 inches. They're glorified G.I. Joes essentially. So setting them up oftentimes can be a huge pain in the ass. That probably accounts for the majority of the time it takes to make the image that I want. Yeah. So initially the project was called The Droids.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
It was an attempt at a play on like, these aren't the droids you're looking for, a famous Star Wars line from the Stormtroopers, but in the Star Wars universe, like the military's like, everyone's wearing helmets, it's very dehumanizing, and there's purpose to that. There was a point to that. When George Lucas was making his films, the bad guys, the foot soldiers of the enemy, they wanted to be devilish looking. They wanted to be faceless monsters to destroy.
2, 1, go.
So by telling these stories with Galactic Warfighters, I feel it helps to humanize these characters, while and that in turn helps to, bridge a separation between the general public and what the military actually experiences in many ways. Now my wife, but then, you know, my girlfriend at the time was like, so this is just a phase, right? And I was like, yeah, no, I'll be done once we're done here with school, no big deal. And I don't know if I knew I was lying to her then, but I was definitely lying to her, because it's been 2.5 years now. I'm still going strong.
All right, so, and I see that Matthew's in the thread. So Matthew, thank you so much for, one, for letting me share this stuff. And just to, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to overlay the name of the producer. So it was produced by actually another fellow Syracuse University alum. Well, I don't know if he's an alum, but he's either at or was at Syracuse University. His name is Joseph Digirolamo. Oh my God, Matthew. A lot of syllables in that, so please apologize to Joseph for me. But yeah, so next time I'm going to overlay, I try to avoid overlaying anything on top of someone's, you know, creations, because it kind of goes against what they composed. But in any case, Matthew, such awesome work, and it really ties into what I was talking about earlier with personal projects. The fact that you know, instead of focusing so much, I'm sure when you did this, and I would love to do an interview at some point, but I'm sure when you started this project, getting social notoriety wasn't one of the goals. So the fact that it's happening and you're getting, because I saw it covered by a bunch of different, you know, photo news blogs, and rightfully so. The concept itself is great, but the execution is absolutely fantastic, because I have this thing right here. So this is like, I've had this for years, and it's about 12 inches. Oh, and it has some spider webs, which is awesome. It shows to you how much I use it. But I would assume that each Star Wars figurine is about this large, and so the ability to kind of articulate and position not just, you know, the entire arm, but like the actual hands and the feet and the head adds to it. But as you saw in the video, one of the coolest things, I was so happy it was captured in the video, was the shot where you have the stormtroopers carrying one of the injured guys, and you see, I don't know what it was that you had your friend throw. I don't know if it was flour or confectionery sugar, but it was brilliantly done. I really like those kinds of behind the scenes things. So Joseph, thank you for producing such a wonderful Digi. Cool. He's in the military visual journalism course with me. So yeah. So Matthew is at Syracuse University, part of the SI Newhouse School of Communication, top in the country. Stacy Pearsall, a good friend of mine, also military photographer, graduated there. Bob Costas graduated there. I think Vanessa Williams graduated there. So a lot of big names graduated from there. Now we've got Matthew finishing up his studies before being deployed to another base, I think. So again, let me just switch over to main camera. I have Matthew's Instagram on the lower thirds here. So if you go to instagram.com/galactic_warfighters, and if you do Google search, you'll find, I believe his website's Callahan Visuals. Great stuff. So Brian, just going back to the Q&A, if you rally, you even said, and here's the question that we had earlier, your focus is on the likes and the shares and whatnot. You can't do that. Take that focus and that effort and put it towards a cohesive project. So for me, for example, I've been for years working on a project called The Path of Least Resistance, which focuses on kind of the more elegant qualities of water as it flows. And we've got tons of water here in Oregon. And so I've been kind of trying to do this visual study of how water interacts with rocks and with dirt and just with all kinds of things, with tree branches. And when I share that, I'm not doing that for any sort of notoriety or, you know, getting a ton of likes. I'm just going to put it out there. And if people like it, great. If not, that's fine too. If you focus on sharing or interacting with people in a group, though, I do think that you'll increase your likelihood in terms of getting quality engagement. And for someone at that level who's, you know, just trying to make it, I think you need to focus on the kind of quality versus quantity. So if we're talking about engagement, it's not so much that you got 1,000 likes, but if you can get, say, 3 or 4 meaningful comments that you interact with, I think to me that's worth way more than your likes, because now you're creating a rapport with other people, and it just snowballs from there. To be honest, that's how it works. You know, it's creating those relationships. You see, with Brian and I, we have now a rapport together, and I think that's really important. So, you know, I do want to thank Brian for asking the question. I want to thank Matthew especially for just putting his amazing work out there for me to highlight and giving me permission to use his photos. Just going to see if there are any other questions. Of course, Colby is monopolizing my freaking stream. Why wouldn't he? No, I think we're good. So with that, let me just, and this should work. Yep, good. Now you're getting audio on my social page. If you'd like to follow me, I am on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat, Twitter, and YouTube. All those / Brian Matiash. I'd love to connect with you. Again, this show is broadcast live on Facebook. So they limit me to a 720p resolution, which is half HD. I also locally record this video at 1080p and upload it to YouTube. So if you want to see a higher resolution version of this absolutely stunning mug, just go ahead and go there. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow on our next episode. Bye-bye.